Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our CEO, Dr. Nelson Ogenshaken, OBE.
What a fantastic way to start. You can always trust the German engineering, precision, everything bang on time. This may sound very short, but you're going to get more of the local activity tomorrow. So we thought we should give you a flavor of what we're going to show you tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy the particular welcome reception that you've got. This is a special event because it's 105th anniversary of FIDIC. And I'm extremely delighted to be your CEO, and thank you for those who selected me. I'm extremely delighted. Few house rule. I just said I need to keep you informed. FIDIC is 105. In 105 years, we've got over 100 countries who are members of FIDIC. And in addition to that, we have those companies employing over 1.1 million. In our relationship, we have over 70 who are daily involved with FIDIC on our committees. On top of that, we have YP, over 3,000 and growing. When you look through the organization, it seems to be moving in the right direction. And I'm really pleased that the board are taking the right decision, notwithstanding all the challenges that we've gone through over the last few years. But in order to do a special welcome to all of you, there are key people which I need to mention. And if I do not mention them, please forgive me. But in the left-hand side, I have the past president, which is absolutely important. From Dick Kell, who was the very first one I met when I came in. I saw Dick this morning, to Ohe, John Boyd, Jeff French, Greg Stomopoulos, Pablo, J1 Lee. Would you please give your hand round to the president? I looked through the book and I asked myself, what are the big statistics for FIDIC? In this particular conference, I am told as a Saturday that we have in excess of 600 people who register. I think our target was 500, so we're not doing badly. If we get 600, that was a Saturday. And I also believe there may be more people who probably registered since then, and there will be more coming up to join us tomorrow. So our target, if you can achieve that 700, may just be the target to aim for in the future. But having said that, we're actually doing this conference as usual in collaboration with our regional association, which is EFCA, and the president of EFCA is sitting there, Kevin. More important, our host nation, VBI. Connor, thank you very much for your hospitality. You've been extremely generous. And I just thought we should give our hands to support and recognize their contribution to this particular conference. I'm not going to spend too much time on the podium because you will be getting me later on in a different form. But actually, I think the time is right for the real person to stand here, and that's the president of FIDIC, Mr. Alan Bentijan. Alan, the floor is yours.
So, guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. Willkommen in Berlin. It's all my German. So, good morning to everyone. Welcome to Berlin for this FIDIC 2018 conference. I am delighted to speaking to you today as our conference opens, and I am delighted for a lot of reasons. The first one, obviously, being the number of people who are attending this meeting, and I'm sure this is highly encouraging for the organizers of the conference. I take, of course, this opportunity also to convey my warmest thanks to the other organizers of the events, European Federation of Consulting Engineering, EFCA, and its president, Kevin Kevin Rudin is here. And of course, the German association, VBI, who have worked alongside the FIDIC teams for many, many long months, setting everything in place to ensure this conference is a success. In particular, I would like to thank the presidents of these two organizations, my friends Kevin Rudin and Volker Cornelius. I have known Kevin and Volker for many years, and I know how dedicated and committed they are to building our industry. So thank you very much, both of you. I would also like, of course, to thank all the delegates from all over the world for being so keen to come and join us in Berlin for this conference. I know that making this trip sometimes required some efforts, both financially and in terms of visas. So I am particularly touched to see that so many of you are here and getting actively involved in our activities. Another source of great satisfaction is a perfect organization. It has already been mentioned by Nelson of this event. And also the highly relevant team that has been selected this year. Mobility and smart infrastructure is indeed a major concern in the world of today, and population growth, and with population growth and above all the increasing urbanization, it will make it more crucial in the world of tomorrow. This topic fits perfectly with FIDIC strategy in regard to sustainability, which alongside quality and integrity is one of the three core values, the three core pillars of our organization. All of us here are convinced that our profession has a key role to play in developing sustainable and high-quality infrastructure, thus making a very good contribution to the societies we live in. Looking beyond infrastructure in itself, our profession has an essential part to play in addressing the issue of smart and sustainable mobility in general. A large number of consulting engineering firms have been particularly active in this field for many years now, and a major conference like this one is the perfect opportunity to highlight our expertise and capabilities, as well as to share new ideas and best practices with all the other parties involved, all the other stakeholders. Naturally, the other big advantage of this kind of event is that it brings the entire FIDIC family together. It gives us a chance to reunite with old friends, which is very important, to make new ones, which is no less important, and discuss the developments in our profession, which is absolutely vital. This experience sharing and these discussions are particularly pertinent today in a world of rapid and often sudden changes. The environmental transition, which I mentioned earlier, the digital revolution, migration, urbanization, and increasing political risks, geopolitical risks. I am sure that these fundamental issues, which are sources of hope, as well of anxiety and uncertainty, will make for some highly informative and fruitful discussions between us. I believe this meeting is also an opportunity to reaffirm the fundamental values that underpin us as an international organization. Quality, integrity, and sustainability, as I said earlier, but also dialogue, peer-to-peer exchanges, and collaboration between professionals from all countries and all cultures. At a time when, here and there, we are starting to observe sometimes inward-looking attitudes, unilateralism, and forceful approaches in international relations, it is important to reiterate the essential role played by international organizations such as FIDIC in promoting the collaboration between professionals and firms from all countries in the interest of society as a whole. And that is why the presence of all of you here from all over the world and from all backgrounds is essential and one of the most precious ways you can encourage and support us. And lastly, the fact that this conference is taking place here in this beautiful and vibrant city of Berlin, as we have seen just in the film, gives it a special significance. For me, as a European citizen and defender of European ideals, there could not be a better place for us to spend these 2 days discussing our vision for the future on account of the often tragic past of Berlin, but Berlin being also a symbol of solidarity and reconciliation between peoples, and also a symbol of dynamism, and now symbol of creativity, modernism, and faith in the future. So the stage is set for the conference to be a great success, and I hope it will be a source of new ideas, fruitful contacts, and rewarding discussions for all of you. It's my great pleasure to declare the Berlin 2018 FIDIC FK VBI conference open. Thank you very much for your attention. Vielen Dank.
Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen. Ich bin Greg Ward und willkommen in Berlin und willkommen zu dieser Weltkonferenz bei FIDIC. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the FIDIC World Conference. My name is Greg Ward. It's my absolute pleasure to be your Master of Ceremonies over the course of the next day, our gala dinner, and through, of course, till the completion of the conference tomorrow. It's an absolutely fantastic opportunity for the entire industry to join together here in one place in Berlin. I'd also like to say a very warm welcome to our live streaming audience who are joining us from around the world. It is wonderful we have the opportunity to be able to spread the messages that we hear here in this space much further than the confines of these four walls. So a very warm welcome to you all as well. A few points regarding the space we find ourselves in here. If we need to remove ourselves, if we need to evacuate at any point, the staff here at the hotel and our event staff will be the people to help us, and they will guide us out through the doors through which you came. The exits are very clearly marked, and then once you are outside, please follow their instructions to ensure our complete safety. The facilities around the hotel are very clearly marked as well, so please avail yourself of those. And we have meal breaks and opportunities to connect via our morning and afternoon teas and our lunches as well. It's a great opportunity to create new relationships and strengthen old relationships. And I would urge you to do this. Often we find it uncomfortable in moving outside of our own circle of friends and communities. This conference is an opportunity for you to become comfortable in being uncomfortable. Take that opportunity. See someone that you don't know very well or don't know at all and make that connection. Be the first person to start the conversation. You never know what may happen from the opportunities that we find in connecting and creating relationships here in this space. We'd like to also get your engagement over the course of the conference, and to do so, we're using the conference app. Now, the simple way of doing this is connecting into the FIDIC voting Wi-Fi, and the information is here. If you have not already downloaded the app, please do so. You can get it from the Google Play Store, you can get it from the iStore as well. And once you have connected via the Wi-Fi here, very simply using the Wi-Fi network FIDIC Voting, use the password FIDIC2018, download the app, and then there is a voting button there within the app. We'd like you to use that. We will give you opportunities through the course of the day and through the course of the conference within the sessions to allow voting for each of these sections. So please check that out. And on the base of the slide, you'll see our hashtag, FIDIC Berlin 2018. Please spread the messages you hear in this forum further, much further, via the use of social media, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, any form of social media. Please spread the message. The more we hear the messages here, the better it is for our community and for our society. I'd like to say a big thank you indeed to our sponsors without whom we could not do this. We could not put on an event of the high standard that we have if we don't have that wonderful support from a range of sponsors. So a huge thank you once again to Bentley, to Aon, to BST Global and Brazilian Engineering for your very, very kind support and sponsorship and ongoing support over the years as well. Also would like to extend, in conjunction with Nelson and Alan, the thanks to EFCA, European Federation of Consulting Associations, for their continued support, and also a big thanks to our host member association who has helped us out in great style, the Verband Beratende Ingenieure, the Association of German Consulting Engineers here directly in Germany. Big thanks too to our exhibitors. Without our exhibitors, again, we have a challenge in putting on the event to the nature of the high standard we wish. So thanks indeed to Brazilian Engineering, Consulting Engineers of India, CIMAR, CENC Mexico, National Chamber of Consulting Firms Mexico, Development Design Consultants Limited, ECV Consultancy Limited, FIDIC Certified Consulting Engineer Pilot Program, KENCA, the Korean Engineering and Consulting Association, KICT, the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology, Nippon Koi, Sophistinik, and of course the VBI, the Verband Beratende Ingenieure. Ladies and gents, we have two wonderful social functions coming up. The gala dinner happening tonight, where we'll be honouring members of our profession and organisations in our profession with awards. And of course the local colour night, which will be happening tomorrow. As Nelson made the comment, what we saw here with the stilt walkers and the lights and sound is just a small taste of what to expect at the local colour night. There are still a few places available. However, we will be cutting off your entries to that from tomorrow morning at the first morning tea. So please, if you wish to attend, come and see us at the registration and make sure that you are part of this wonderful event happening here on Tuesday night in Berlin. So this brings us then to our content that we have for the conference, which is absolutely fantastic. We have asked numerous questions of our speakers and hope to have those questions answered throughout the sessions. Our opening keynote speaker is joining us here in a short moment, talking around the future of infrastructure demand and development. And we ask, what are some of the key drivers? What are the politics, the technology and big business? Are we leaders or are we followers in the pursuit of smart solutions? So our opening keynote speaker this morning is Dr. Gernot Struber, Senior Partner at McKinsey & Company based in Munich. He's a native of Germany. He's worked in Munich, Cleveland and Hong Kong, advising clients in over 25 countries globally on digital transformations, operational strategy and performance improvement, particularly in the infrastructure, aerospace, rail and machinery sectors. He currently leads the capital projects and infrastructure practice in Western Europe and is the co-leader of the operations practice. So with our opening keynote speech joining us here around the future of infrastructure, demand and development, ladies and gentlemen, please do put your hands together and give a very, very warm welcome to Mr. Dr. Gernot Struber.
Thank you, Greg, for this very nice introduction. Good morning, everyone. I can say it's almost a home game for me. Munich's not that far away, even though every time I travel to Berlin, I'm wondering when we'll eventually get the new airport. So we'll see. Anyway, it's a great pleasure for me to have the opportunity to open up this conference with the presentation. And I would like to actually start with a video to set the stage.
From emerging to developed economies, construction is one of the world's largest sectors. Yet the productivity of this $10 trillion industry has barely increased in decades. The industry and global economies cannot afford for productivity to slip further. There are pockets of excellence. The challenge is for those to spread across geographies and sectors. If they do, the industry could increase productivity by 50 to 60%. That could boost the value the industry creates by $1.6 trillion, enough to meet half the world's infrastructure needs. There is much to be done, by every player and government. Change is needed in 7 key areas. First, by working to reshape regulations. Second, by rewiring contractual frameworks that govern how project owners, contractors, and subcontractors collaborate. Third, by rethinking design and engineering processes and expanding adoption of standardized prefabricated designs. Fourth, by optimizing procurement and supply chain management. Fifth, by improving on-site execution. Sixth, by radically increasing the use of technology across digital tools, new materials, and advanced automation. And seventh, by training and developing the workforce. For some parts of the industry, there is a radical solution waiting to be seized, a manufacturing-like system of mass production, with more standardization, modularization, and prefabrication that could raise productivity by 5 to 10 times the current level. The industry has an opportunity to improve efficiency and capture billions of dollars of new value, but all players need to move to break the current deadlock. With soaring demand, rising wages, and cheaper technology coming online, there is no time to lose.
So maybe with these thoughts, I'd like to just have a few words on McKinsey. I'm not sure that all of you have had any direct contact with McKinsey in the field of construction, but we've actually done over the last few years almost 2,000 projects on infrastructure and construction. We're actually ranked #1 by Kennedy Consulting as the deepest and broadest general consultant in capital productivity. 40% of our work in the meantime is digital, which obviously is becoming a core topic for all of us here in the room, whether we like it or not. Particularly in construction, we have done a lot of research work, some of which I'm going to share with our McKinsey Global Institute, which has also been ranked the #1 private sector think tank by the University of Pennsylvania. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, just wanted to get you a bit familiar with why McKinsey is here on this stage, which is probably not the necessary conventional approach. Construction. When we look back in history, it was once a leader in innovation. Breakthrough technology, breakthrough monuments came from construction. When we look at what has happened, it's not such a glorious picture anymore. The productivity growth in agriculture from the 1940s to the 2010s has been a factor of 1,500. In manufacturing, productivity has increased 760-fold. Retail, 700-fold. Construction, I think this number is as close to zero as it can get in this comparison. Now, putting that into context, one thing that we find particularly critical is that we are talking about the biggest and arguably one of the most important sectors in the world. We're talking about $10 trillion GDP every year, growing by 3.5%. And in that context, the lack of productivity growth is particularly alarming. And having had the opportunity to speak with about 80 to 90 players in the construction field over the last 2 years, in all asset classes, public sector, across the whole project value chain, I think it's fair to say that construction will probably be a decisive sector for the competitiveness of regions. If we don't get construction under control and improve it, the regions who will do so will have a huge competitive advantage to thrive economically, which the regions who can't will lose out on. What we've done As I mentioned, this was some research by the McKinsey Global Institute. We've looked at different regions, and it's not that all regions are alike. What we've mapped here is a graph of the construction labor productivity, which you see on the vertical axis, and productivity growth, the change in productivity over the last 10 years. And the size of the bubbles gives you a size of the construction sector in the respective countries. Obviously, you see a pretty scattered picture. You see on the bottom with lower productivity, a broad range of countries that are emerging. Then you see a big, let me say, group of countries in the middle, or let me say middle left, which is the more developed countries. They already have a somewhat higher productivity in construction, but what's very clear is the change in productivity is almost zero, with very few exceptions. And this is what we need to discuss and think about how we can change that. If you just take the picture of Germany, what we've mapped here is the productivity of the total economy, which is dashed line, versus the construction sector. And you see there's a huge difference. In 2015, in construction, the productivity was $29 per labor hour. In manufacturing, or the average economy, it was $48 per labor hour. Just to give you an impression of what that means, that is a productivity loss in terms of $100 billion a year. That's half the total GDP of countries like Denmark or Finland. Just lost in Germany. Now, probably not really helping the picture, or you could argue one of the driving forces. We are working in an environment that is probably slightly different from many other industries that we compare ourselves to. On the left-hand side, you see the degree of digitization of various sectors. There were 18 criteria that we've put to that to evaluate the different sectors. And construction comes in second, just slightly above agriculture and hunting. Second, our industry does not invest sufficiently in R&D. I realize margins are low. At the same time, if you don't invest in R&D, you don't make progress. You do not get the productivity increase that we all need. And again here, when you look at different industries, construction is alarmingly low, with roughly 0.5% of revenues invested into new technology, process improvements, etc. And thirdly, when you look at IT investment, which is a core driver of what we need to do if we do want to embark digitalization, again, construction comes out at a very low level when we compare it with other industries. Again, we're investing about 1% of our revenues into IT in our sector versus 3, 4, 5% in other more competitive sectors. I just wanted to open up with a couple of perspectives of what the starting point is and where we have, let me use the word lingered, more or less, for the reason, it's hard to say, decades is probably the right word to use here, because we haven't really changed all that much. And when you look at pictures from construction sites today versus construction sites 20 years ago, except that today's pictures are in color, you won't see much difference. Obviously, we don't want to complain. We want to talk about what we can do. And what we have done is we've looked at different levers that can help us improve construction productivity. We've identified 7 that we try to group and understand. I think the first analysis is when you look at the cumulative impact, which is the second column from the right, we can make a huge difference in construction productivity improvement, about 50 to 60%. Second, there's not a silver bullet. We cannot point to one lever that will solve it all. But we have to really work along a range of levers. One is regulation. It's incredible how complex building codes and regulations in our industries are, sometimes even going down to city levels or even smaller than that, in a world that is globalizing wherever we look. We did not put a value to that. It's hard to capture what the value of that is, so we left that as an enabler. But then when you look at other levers, collaboration contracting, we still, or many of us still believe that we can only make margins in our industry by claiming and suing when things go wrong. I don't think that's a recipe for success of an industry. Second, design and engineering. With the low R&D figures I showed before, there's a huge opportunity to do much more. A lot of times we start building without even have a decent design. I'm not talking about a finished design, a decent design in place. Supply chain management, very local, very much who you know rather than who has the best offer, and brutally price-based, not performance-based. This is not how any other industry would look at the supply chain. On-site execution. We always have the idea by getting more cheaper labor onto construction sites, we will get better results. It doesn't work. And by the way, we don't have enough people anymore in most of the regions that I've been talking to. That's not the solution. And then there's the big topic of technology, which you see here as well, probably the somewhat outstanding driver of construction productivity that we've been lagging, and capability building. It's actually a significant portion on this chart. We do not invest in building capabilities. We just try to get the job done by throwing people at it. So a big thing, I've highlighted a couple of things that I felt were more important for this group as construction engineers, which obviously is how do we work together? And we see some big trends there. Obviously, an increased focus on design and engineering, as well as the big lever of better use of technology. So let me highlight a few things around those topics. One is, we have done quite a deep analysis of a range of projects in various countries. And what we found is that there is a correlation between the degree of effort in a project that is put into the upfront, engineering, design, and the actual resulting productivity. You actually see two lines, because when you look at the chart, there's one line for, let me say, more emerging economies, which has a slightly lower slope, but you still see the slope, and that to me is a very important message in any economy. Even when you don't have so much discipline, it is worth to front load the projects. And this slope actually gets slightly steeper when you get to the more mature economies. So I think the key message from that chart is, even though statistics can always lie, there's quite a number of data behind this. There is a reward in front loading projects, and we'll get to that later. So I think that when we look at it, there are a couple of lessons learned from this data. We have to improve the design process and the outcomes. This is something that is often overlooked. We have to improve collaboration from all the involved parties. I'm actually personally involved in a couple of new contracts for 500 to 1 billion projects where we're discussing how to not go to a full IPD, integrated project delivery mode, but at least get all the key players selected and integrated before we even start the design, to make sure that everybody can comply with what we do. Third is encourage a repeatability of design. I'm actually an aeronautical engineer by training, and I've worked a lot in the automotive industry. In the construction industry, for me, it's always like building prototypes and selling those every single time. None of you would ever buy a prototype car. It's bad, it breaks down, doesn't get spare parts, you don't have service. You wouldn't buy it. Well, we do it over and over and over and over again. And then we need to push for advanced solutions. Design for manufacturing and assembly. A lot of times we only find out on site that things don't work as we had planned them to work. Then we tear things down or at least have to redesign them. And then institutionalize much more design to value. Even in very mature industries like automotive, design to value still gives you, every time you go at it, 10 to 12% productivity improvement or cost reductions in the products. We don't even leverage those tools yet. And just as an example, you see on the right-hand side of the slide here, an analysis of the impact of front-end loading of a project. We've looked at 318 projects where we asked how much effort have you put into the front-end loading, in alignment, early collaboration, and you see that the more you put into that, it does pay back. I think the question is more, who has the courage and who has the energy to do that early on? Another trend, which you've all heard about, where I can just tell you from the discussions I'm personally having in the industry around the world, from Australia to China to Europe, US, everywhere, we have a massive trend to pre-engineering, pre-casting, and prefabrication. And what is really impressive is the driver is not necessarily the cost. The driver is construction lead time reduction. If you go to modular real estate, I've seen case examples where throughput time reduction was 50 to 75%. You get the assets out earlier, financing impact, less time on the construction site. And maybe even more important, very recently I've talked to many engineering construction firms that we need to go into prefab much more because we don't get the workers on the construction sites anymore. But we do get them to work into factory-like environments that are more industrialized. This is extremely important. I think this is one of the most relevant messages for you as well, that you have to think and drive the projects you're involved in much more to prefab, pre-construction, and early engineering. On technology, we can discuss all we want. Technology is there, and it's ready to use, and there are no excuses. Examples of individual use of technology are plentiful. The investment into technology over the last couple of years has soared since about 3 years ago. Every year, venture capital is putting between $200 and $400 million a year into construction technology. $200 to $400 million a year into construction technology. That will bear fruit, the solutions will be out there, and whether we embrace them or not, the ones who will embrace them will have an advantage. That is not even accounting for the big deals that we're now seeing. Oracle buying Aconex for $1.2 billion. That is not included in those numbers, but I think it's also a clear signal that the world is changing, even in an industry that hasn't changed for decades. We've just highlighted on this chart one of the few, or some of the few, let me say, most frequently applied technologies. It's definitely not complete. But one thing that may help, we've analyzed about 400 technology solutions for construction. Try to keep track of what's happening. And there's a lot of clutter out there. As an individual company, whether you're in the engineering or in the construction part, you won't be able to have an overview of everything that's happening. That's why there are a couple of things that I would like to encourage you how to think about it. One is try to think about different fields of application. And one thing that has emerged as very useful also in discussions is there are several areas of technology. One is everything that happens out in the field. Probably less directly relevant to you because you're typically not necessarily the ones actually putting the things together in site. But you're responsible for designing them. You're responsible for making sure how things are done. So these are still important things that you have to understand. I would just like to mention things like digital twinning, point clouds that connect to BIM data in the meantime to compare progress, etc. Second is everything that we call office. It's really more where you are core and center. It's the design, it's the upfront, it's the work that happens in the office environment of a project. And then there's the whole section of team. Collaboration is probably one of the key things. I've never seen an industry that is as fragmented, has as many parties involved in projects, and is as diluted as this industry. And what we already see is a degree of horizontal integration, meaning that we will get less parties involved, and project owners are increasingly trying to get better control of the projects by having larger areas of responsibilities assigned to individual parties in the projects. Meaning that instead of dealing with 25 individual companies to put together a project, it's much better if I only have 5 that can really display the whole space of the project. So these are all areas where technology can help you. I would like to take a very quick, and this is also to get you warmed up to the voting and polling. Please take out your mobile phones if you have the app downloaded, I hope. I would like to get a poll of what was the most advanced digital project setup you have collaborated in to date. And the choices are none. Digital document exchange platform, where you just said, well, we had a platform to exchange things. 3D BIM design, and here I really mean full 3D BIM, not 5 drawings or 10% of the drawings. 4D BIM, meaning we also collaborated or co-located time with the drawings, or full 5D BIM. I don't want to go any further than that at this point in time. So please take your poll now. Fantastic. The system stops after 30 seconds, so you can't vote anymore. I think this is a very interesting picture, and I would like to also thank you for being honest. This is really reflecting, let me say, the typical discussions I have with projects. I think there's a couple of lessons in this. One is everyone, or almost everyone, has been exposed to technology. It's not that we're all left-handed and don't know how to use our mobile phones. On the other hand, and even last night we had some pre-discussions that people are saying we've passed the trend, we're way behind, everybody's already using 5D BIM and we're behind. This really reflects my experience much more, and to be honest, on the 5D BIM, I would have expected much more. I have yet to see a large project, and I know I didn't say large project here, that has been done fully in 5D BIM. I'm not aware of a large project that has full 5D BIM application, and I may be wrong. Second, and we'll get to that, what are the implications? Again, you can use your mobile phones. If you think about an ideal project, what is the total cost reduction for, and again, I'm talking about a fairly complex project, let me say above $100 million. I'm not talking about the 2 million private home that we can all control in our minds. What do you think we can save in terms of cost when it's well-defined, excellently prepared, and then flawlessly executed? I know it's a bit in utopia, but it's something where I would like to understand what you think this industry could achieve if we would really give it our best. Very good. The 30 seconds are up. Again, I think a very interesting result, because the majority, and it's a nice Gaussian curve, so I like this as a engineer, thinks we're probably somewhere between 20 and 30%. And to be honest, I know this is a bit an ambiguous question. It's not a real scientific question, so there's probably several ranges you could put down here. On the other hand, I think what it shows to me is that we do believe there is significant potential on the cost side if we put things together. The question is, how can we deliver it? On the other hand, it also shows to me that a lot of people who are working every day in this industry are a bit skeptical about how big the size of the prize could be if we would do it right. So let me just share here what we have done. Again, we have broken down a typical project, an infrastructure project of what we believe along the levers I showed before could be done. And if you look at the original project value, then typically you have some changes during the construction phase, things that are unexpected, ground discoveries that you didn't know before. There will always be something that you can't account for. But net, if you really go to full digital solutions, and we've simulated the most commonly used tools in projects on what the impact on projects would be, you still get to somewhere between 20 and 45%. I know it's a big range, but again, this is probably less a scientific exercise than what could the size order of magnitude be. And I think it reflects very well what you're saying, except that I would probably be a bit more bullish in terms of what our aspiration should be. Because typically, if we set an aspiration of 50, we'll probably get 30. So if we set 40, maybe we'll get the 20 that we should be aiming for. If we only set 20, we probably get 5 or 10. So that's a bit where I would like to have our minds. One additional aspect that I think is extremely important in construction is that we also see a significant internationalization. This is a chart that is resulting from our most recent survey on smart cities, and I like the theme of the conference of smart infrastructure, fits very well. We've looked at smart cities around the world. We've picked 50 cities to do some analysis of how many things have been applied, how well the infrastructure is done. And what you see on this chart is really that, nobody is at a high level. The tendency to have smart city capability is higher if you have higher GDP, maybe not surprising. At the same time, I think that you see it's happening around the world. And I think this is the color coding you see here, different regions, and this is the key message for what I'd like to mention at this conference. We will see a significant internationalization because a lot of the technologies, a lot of the processes, a lot of the products that we will see in smart cities or smart infrastructure, they will not be local anymore. Nobody will invest and develop things, just put them into Berlin and nobody else will ever recognize it. I think you will invest, have the proof of concept in one city, and then you try to make it a global product. And this is something that is extremely important. Up to now, our industry is a fairly local industry. You typically have a lot of local partners involved in the projects. The design, etc., is typically developed locally, and we will see of much more internationalization around this as well. The way I would like, or way we structured the survey, and maybe this is something that is helpful for you to think about how you think about smart infrastructure or smart city. There's 3 layers. Not all of them equally important to you as engineers, but there's 3 layers in smart cities. One is the technology base. That is all the sensors, all the IT infrastructure that you have to put in to make the smart work. The second, as important, and when you think about your mobile phones, I think you can easily make the correlation. You need applications. You need to do something with that infrastructure. Just having a sensor doesn't help. You need to put that to use somehow. But even if you have an application and no one uses it, it's no use either. So you also need to have the public adoption, as we call it, when we talk about cities. And again, this is something that in the report that is available on GII.com, so if you want to go much deeper, we've broken it down along the cities, along these 3 dimensions, and it's very interesting. The chart I've shown before was just a cumulative ranking. What we have done there is we've looked at each of these 3 dimensions, and the interesting piece is there are some cities that have a great infrastructure, but there's not a lot of applications, and then obviously not a lot of adoption. Others don't have such a great infrastructure, but applications are flourishing, and people are soaking it up, and that also gives you a very nice score. In the end, the best smart cities really play well in all 3 dimensions. Let me try to sum up a bit what we are thinking about. And one thing that, as a consultancy, a management consultancy, you have a big advantage. I can look across many industries. I don't see only one industry. What we have done is we've looked at other industries who are much further ahead in the digitalization already, like media, like telecom. And there's a couple of things that we've seen. We call it the 10 hard truths, because these are things we have seen inevitably in every one of these industries. That means they're not specific to a industry, but they're more specific to what happens as industries move through digitalization. And I don't want to read through all 10 of them, but I would like to point out a few that I think are extremely critical and that are also the center of the discussions that I'm personally having with clients in the construction space. Number 1, digital transfers disproportionate value to the customer. And this is an important thing. I'm actually involved in a complete digital transformation of an E&C company right now. We are targeting, or we've identified opportunities through digitalization of improving project value by about 15%. What we estimate is that probably only 2 or 3 of those percentage points will land into the EBIT of this company. Because in the competitive pressure, we realize others will also be making advances. We'll have to give a lot of that away, which is good. In the end, it's how progress is made. It's how you create productivity, but more important for us, we create better infrastructure with less money. Second, number 4, and this is probably one of the most critical things. As a consultant, you always get the question, give me the examples of who has done that, of who has gone through this transformation. And it's interesting. In a trend like digitalization, you can't look at the competitors. Everybody's in a different situation. There is not the same solution for everyone. And this goes into number 5. Fast following is becoming too slow. In the age of digitalization, if you follow somebody who's done it, it's extremely tough to catch up. We've actually seen that about 45% of the value captured from digitalization in industry is captured by the first movers. 45% is captured by the first movers, which are typically 10% of the sector. The next 30% are captured by the fast followers, who had about a 30% share to start with. So even the fast followers can barely keep their share in an industry, which means that the other 60% either die or have to deal with a much lower share in the future. And number 7, digital natives attack fast. But I think particularly in construction, we're dealing with an environment where projects are long-lived. A lot of times we're looking sometimes at big projects of 5, 10, 15, or even more years. I think the trust into a digital native to deal with such a big project, it will still be some time away that we will see that. So I think that we have one advantage. we still have some credit from the experience we have in our current setup, but we need to make real use of it because that will not last forever. And last but not least, digital transformation is not about digitization. It's about improving operational excellence and making things better, providing new offerings to our customers and to our society. So don't do digitalization for digitalization's sake. Create a new value proposition with it. So, summing it up, what have I tried to convey to you? There are three, let me say, large trends happening simultaneously in our industry. And this is a difference to most other industries. One is digitization. We've talked about this. Massive investments in technology. We see the emergence of trade platforms. Disruptive attackers. We do see them. You all have read the news about the Qataris of this world. Integrated projects. We do see projects that are being done in an integrated project delivery way. Second, in my mind, at least as important, industrialization. And when I say that, having grown up in manufacturing industries, we see a huge labor force depletion, lack of labor force. We need to move into prefab. The way to go is not doing a lot of precasting. To be honest, whether you cast in one location and then ship, I don't think that makes a huge difference. I think it's about the integrated prefabrication. I'm not saying it has to be the pods that are being shipped around the world. All I'm saying is we have to find products and solutions that deliver much higher degree of integration before we ship stuff to the construction site. Clever solutions just for transport reasons will probably still have a significant assembly on the construction site. We will have much more standardization. We will be able to deliver similar products adapted to local market needs, both from a regulation point as well as from a market point of view, with modules where you have the same basic structures, but everything that the customer touches and feels can be adapted so it's meeting the local demands. And last but not least on this dimension, industrial grade supply chains. We already see that emerging. The question to me is, do we need all the wholesalers that we still have in the industry? Personally, when I look at other industries, I don't really see a big reason why they should be there forever. And we will have a much more predictable supply chain as well. We shouldn't forget that. Reliability is probably in our industry more important than the cost itself. And today, we always look at the lowest bidder. I think in the future, we look at the most reliable supplier, much like in other industries. And then the last dimension, which I talked about, was globalization. It's happening in our industry as well. We need to be very clear about that, which also means that scale becomes more important. Localization, we see a convergence of requirements. I think that over the long run, cities, states, countries, maybe even regions, can't afford to have very local design standards and requirements forever, because if they do that, either people just won't come and build, or it will be so slow and cumbersome that they will not be able to keep up with the pace of other regions or cities. Second, we will have standardized modular solutions. When I think about the smart city, the infrastructure, there's no reason why one city should have a fundamentally different technology involved in building the infrastructure as it's building out the smart city than other cities. We'll see a competition, but we will see much more multiplication of successful products in the different cities. And last but not least, we will see an increasing benefit of scale. If you start to make investments into IT, if you start to make investments into your labor force, if you start to make investments into R&D, the more often you can deploy and value those investments, the less hurtful they become when it gets to your bottom line P&L. And that's why scale will make a big difference. Being able to deliver globally will make a big difference. We already see, for example, in modular hotel construction, we see that one of the biggest suppliers of hotel modules to the US is coming from China. They actually ship modules from China to the US. Intuitively, it's a bit surprising that we ship this much around the world, but it's a core business. And we see this. So as you reflect on this, I'd like to just remind you, you need to develop new business models for the future value chain in projects, meaning that you have to rethink your value proposition, no matter exactly where in the chain you are. Providing the same value as today won't do it. You need to shape an aggressive transformation plan. Incremental improvements won't do the trick for you anymore. We saw this. Catching up is not really an option. You have to build ecosystems of partners. The industry is so fragmented, you have to work with others. We need to get much more standardization, which only happens across partners. And last but not least, we haven't really talked about this, but it's a massive change and a massive impact that's ahead of us. And you have to channel and make that work, take the people with you on the journey. Those thoughts, I would like to thank you for your attention and participation. Thank you very much.
Well, I have to say, Dr. Schröber, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here to start us out in fine style as our keynote speaker in the opening of our FIDIC 2018 conference. A fantastic presentation in that you're showing us the opportunity that is available to here, for us here globally as a complete industry. If we're looking at the levels of productivity that you placed at the beginning of the session, that shows us there is so much opportunity for us to be able to increase the level of our businesses. You also spoke about digitization, and I think that's a very important part of the entire business, being that we're also talking around the digital world a little later after lunch with Javier Baldor from BST and Greg Bentley from Bentley Systems. So it dovetails perfectly in with that. A wonderful start today, and thank you very much for joining with us here.
Thank you very much.
Bye.